Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Glory Glory Man United podcast. And on this special episode, me and Jerry are going to do a countdown of the top 10 Man United strikers of the 21st century. Now, the reason why we're not doing an all-time list is because, we only started getting into football in the late 90s. We're only 36 years old. So if we were doing an all-time list, we would obviously include Dennis Law, Dennis Violet, and even Eric Cantona. Eric Cantona, I suppose, just retired when we were seven, and we were only toddlers whenever he joined the club. But so we want to focus on players that we have a strong memory of. So we're going to do a list of the best United strikers of the 21st century, so since 2000. But this also includes players that played the bulk of their United career in the 90s, and then that continued on into the noughties as well. So those players are still included. Despite narrowing it down to the last 26 years, it's still enormously difficult to choose just 10 strikers because we've had so many world class players in that position over the years. Not enough, I suppose, in the last decade or so, but in this quarter of a century as a whole, there's been many, many top forwards. And it's when I was sitting down to compile my list, it was more difficult than I thought. I think I had an idea of who my top 10 was going to be, but trying to rank them is difficult, and I think it changed my mind one or two times during that process. And I'm sure, Jerry, it was just as difficult for yourself.
Yeah, it was a lot more difficult than what I expected when we both decided that we were going to do this list. I think people will have a fair idea of who the top two or three will be. I think there's a couple of strikers that stand out over the last 25 years as the top of the top class, top strikers that we've seen, but there's two or three that also missed out that I could have mentioned just as easy, and I think we've been blessed with so many top class strikers over the years. We're lucky to have seen them, and like you said, it's kind of leaned out a little bit in the last 5 to 10 years, but hopefully things will come round again, and the likes of Benjamin Seshko maybe could join that list in a few years' time.
Yeah, if he even joins the top 10, he will have been a success, in my opinion. But yeah, we had so many worldies under Sir Alex, and it was very, very difficult to narrow it down to just 10, even though we're only starting from the year 2000. So I'll start off with my number 10, and then you tell me your number 10, Jerry, and then we'll just take it from there. So, number
Okay.
10 for me, yep. So, number 10 on my list is Carlos Tevez. And I'm probably going to say this a few times, but he probably would have been higher on the list had he been at the club longer and not joined Manchester City. But his two seasons at the club were hugely successful, of course. His first season, we won a Champions League and Premier League double. And then the second season, we won the Premier League, the League Cup, the Club World Cup, and got to a Champions League final, of which he should have started but didn't, in my opinion. And in those two seasons, he got so many crucial goals, um, so many goals where he linked up so well with the other world class forwards that we had at the time. So he got uh, in the 2008-7 season, he got 19 in that you know hugely successful season for United, and then he got 15 in the season after that. But I think his game time was heavily reduced due to the signing of Dimitar Berbatov in the 2008 summer. So um, again, like he probably would have been higher if he'd been at the club longer, but it was a hugely successful 2 year spell at the club, and with the club winning almost everything but the FA Cup in that spell, and he was a big part of that. So that's why he makes my top 10. So who's your number 10 then, Jerry?
Well, my number 10, and I promised the viewers that myself and Kyle weren't in cahoots with this one, but I've gone with Carlos Tevez as well as my number 10. I just slotted him in there ahead of one or two other strikers just for what he achieved in his 2 year spell. And I know, like you said, it was just a loan spell, but he is definitely up there with one of the most successful strikers as part of the team. and as part of the squad, in what he won and what he achieved. Um, One of my favourite players from that era as well, and I know that's a controversial take. He's not the most popular person in Old Trafford, and a lot of people probably rightly dislike him for moving on to Man City. But I've always liked Carlos Tevez. I loved his style of play, tenacious and powerful, and linked up really well with Rooney and Ronaldo, particularly with Rooney. I think that's one of the best strike partnerships I saw in my time following United. And again, just the knack for popping up with some huge goals as well was really something that endeared me to Tevez. Never say die attitude, and the way he hounded the opposition was brilliant to watch. We've kind of lacked that now with a long time at United. And again, great output as well in his first season. His minutes kind of dropped off in his second season with Berbatov's arrival. And we know what happened after that. So, yeah, Carlos Tevez opening things up at number 10 for me.
Yeah, so we're both in agreement in terms of the number 10 spot. So moving on to number 9, and we've already mentioned him. On my list is Dimitar Berbatov. Um, I think Tevez would have been ahead of him had he been at the club longer, because I think overall Tevez is probably the better footballer, and some people might disagree with that. But Berbatov was at the club 4 seasons, and while his most successful season individually was that 2010-11 season, where he was the joint top scorer in the league with Carlos Tevez. The only problem is Carlos Tevez was a Manchester City player at that point. But during that season, Berbatov had some very, very memorable performances. The hat trick against Liverpool at Old Trafford was where he won 3-2. Then the 5 goals he got against Blackburn in a 7-1 win. Those are the standout performances. Even during that season, there was a moment that stands out to me that wasn't even a goal. It was the ball that was drilled at him by Paul Scholes, and the first touch was just absolutely incredible. If we go back to his first season, in which he got 14. He got 12 in his second season, 21 his most fruitful season in the 2010-11 season, and then he only got 9 in his fourth season. So his influence kind of waned a bit, and then someone else who we will mention later came in to replace him when he departed for Fulham. But in that first season, of course, there were some memorable moments, not least that bit of skill against West Ham. The what was the wee pirouette that he did, that roasted the defender and then set up Ronaldo for a tap in, and nobody will ever forget that. Um, yeah, he done some fantastic things in the United shirt, and I think he probably ranks in the top 10, no problem, in the last 25 years. And yeah, across his 4 seasons, he won the Premier League twice. Narrowly missed out then in his final season. Um, and yeah, I think overall he was a success. He came in at 27 and left when he was 31. Um, Now I know that Bresh, who's been on this podcast regularly, thinks that we shouldn't have signed him at all because it led to Tevez's departure in the long run. But yeah, I don't think that's Berbatov's fault, and I think that overall, he was a successful signing, so he's number 9 on my list. Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dimitar Berbatov for number 9 as well. So we've both had the same players now for number 10 and number 9. Again, just a fantastic striker. A player that a lot of people felt we didn't need at the time, but I was the opposite. I was really, when I heard we were linked with Berbatov, I was buzzing. It was something different to what we had at the time. We had tenacious strikers in Rooney and Tevez, and Ronaldo was more of a forward, more of a roaming attacker, whereas Berbatov added that little bit of grace, and he had that languid style. The first touch was immaculate and almost a lazy kind of way about him. Which a lot of fans didn't appreciate, but that was his style and what he produced. Particularly in his second and third seasons, where it was just magnificent. I always felt he had that kind of Cantona-esque or even a touch of Zlatan Ibrahimovic about him, and the way he carried himself, But yeah, it was a joy to see him play. Some of those touches that he pulled off were fantastic, and maybe he didn't go on to achieve, individually what we had hoped he would when we paid what 30 million quid to Tottenham on deadline day. But he still got joint top scorer in that 2010-11 season, and we went on to win the league. So that kind of repaid the fee for me. And you go back to that first season where he pulled off that magnificent pirouette against West Ham. That's a moment that we'll never forget. That's almost an iconic moment now. Um, it's probably a pity with the attack we had, Berbatov, Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo, that we didn't go on and win the Champions League again. That's probably my only regret. But just looking back, how lucky were we to see a quartet of attackers at the club, such as that? It was great times, and will we ever see the like of that again?
No, I don't think so. Sadly, um, we only had all four of them for one season, which is a shame. I suppose it was hard to keep them all happy for longer than that. Um, One of the standout moments in terms of seeing all four of them on the pitch was against Wigan. I think you remember the game where we were 1-0 down. We were in a title fight with Liverpool. This was in maybe early May.
Yeah,
So it's one of the final
yeah,
games of the season. We were losing 1-0 away at Wigan. And then Fergie made substitutions, and all four of them were on the pitch at once. And I remember the camera just showing them all one by one, and just thinking, wow, this is some attack. And then, surprise, surprise, United won the game 2-1. Tevez getting the equaliser, and then Michael Carrick with a fantastic effort from his left foot, from
mm,
a side footer from the edge of the box to win the game. But seeing all four of them on the pitch at the same time was incredible and a sight to behold. Yeah,
yeah,
so Berbatov got 56 goals across his 4 seasons. So uh, very much a successful signing. And as you said, that season where he was a joint top scorer in the league with Tevez, uh, and we won the league that season, that he very much repaid his transfer fee there. Um, so moving on, this is probably where it starts to get more difficult. Um, so at number 8, I went with Teddy Sheringham, uh, who of course was signed in 1997 and was there at United until 2001. Seems like a relatively short period, but boy, that was probably the most successful period in United's history. And he was such a massive part of that. Not least scoring in the FA Cup final as a substitute, and again as a substitute in the Champions League final, in both those finals in 1999. So he played a huge part in us winning the treble. I remember even him scoring twice at Highbury very early on in his United career. You remember him scoring an equaliser against Arsenal at Old Trafford, maybe at turn of the century, I think it was. Um, he scored so many important goals. Essentially, he was brought in to replace Eric Cantona as the number, as number 10, and that seemed like a daunting task, but he made it look easy, didn't he, Jerry?
yeah. He did. He was a brilliant player, and he could kind of play two roles almost at different stages. He could drop off and play as almost a link man as a number 10, or he could hold the ball up as a number 9 just as easy. And what I remember for with Teddy as well, he was great at winning headers and winning flick-ons. And he used that to the best of his ability in the final in '99, in the Champions League final, when he flicked it on for Ollie to score the winner. And a great player, a good choice for number 8.
Yeah, I suppose that's a valuable point there. He got a goal and an assist in the Champions League final for United, which just underlines his importance. I think we signed him, but I think he's already over 30 when we brought him in, so it might have raised a few eyebrows. But it was a shrewd piece of business from Fergie, and he was a very, very influential striker for United. So I think 14 in his first season. Um, Unbelievably, he only got 5 goals in the treble-winning season, but 2 of those
Yeah.
were in finals.
Mm,
Um, then he got 6 in the 99-2000 season. But then in 2000-2001 season, he got 21 goals, by far his most fruitful season in United shirt. And remarkably, he was let go at the end of that season and went back to Tottenham, and ended up playing against United in that famous 5-3 victory over Tottenham at White Hart Lane, in which we were 3-0 down at half time. But yeah, yes, we have so many fond memories of Teddy. I think he signed for United when we were 7, and he left when we were 11. But uh, so he was very much part of the United team that we first started watching and started to get
yeah.
into football as young fans, and we will never forget him. So, who is your number 8 then, Jerry?
Well, if people didn't think we were in cahoots before, they're definitely going to think so now because I've gone with Teddy Sheringham as well for number 8. Just like you said, a huge influence in that post Cantona era. Um, Again, just a multifunctional striker. You know, as I said, he could win his headers and hold the ball up, or he really kind of played his best football when he dropped into the pocket and linked to play. Whether it be with Andy Cole or Dwight York or with Ollie or whoever, you know, he really had a knack of just linking that play to great effect. And like you said, he was one of the four strikers. Solskjaer, York, and Cole being the other three when we were first getting into following United. So some great memories of Teddy Sheringham. Um, Not the most prolific for his first couple of years, but one of my best memories of Teddy Sheringham was that 2000-2001 season, where he won the PFA Player of the Year and finished as top scorer. Just brilliant. It came out of nowhere. I think he was probably almost our age now when he won that Player of the Year. So scored some great goals. I remember a particular hat trick he scored against Southampton at Old Trafford in a 5-0 win, kind of October 2000, I would say. Remember there was a little chip over Jones, the Southampton goalie. It's exquisite, and that's the type of skill Teddy could pull off. You know, really skillful player in his own right, um, and a real team player as well. I would say that was probably his biggest strength. So yeah, Teddy Sheringham in at number 8, and a good choice for me as well.
Yeah, he didn't need pace because he was so technical and such an intelligent footballer. So
Yeah,
pace wasn't a requirement for him. He didn't have it, obviously, but it didn't matter. So yeah, very much deserving of his place in both our top 8. Um, so number 7 for me, and it starts to get more difficult, but I'll explain my reason why I decided to separate. Like, I think when I first drafted this, the person who's now number 6 was number 7, and vice versa.
yeah,
So it kind of changed my mind during this process. So eventually, my number 7 was RVP, and the
yeah,
reason being is that obviously the biggest reason is that in his first season at the club, he scored 30 goals and it won us our 20th title, and that is the single biggest contribution to the club. Um, some of the goals were just absolute crackers. Remember the hat trick against Southampton? I think it was very early on in his career. That was a
yeah,
3-2 win, so the hat trick really mattered. Um, the Obviously the goal that people remember most is that assist from Rooney, where he plays a crossfield ball from, I think it's just in from the halfway point, and Van Persie just volleys it into the corner from the edge of the area, and we end up. And that's the game where we won the title, where we won it mathematically, and he got a hat trick in
mm,
that game as well. I remember even an FA Cup third round game. We were 2-1 down to West Ham because Fergie played a rotated team. From Percy came off the bench, And I just remember Giggs playing a diagonal ball over the top. He just kills it with his right foot, and then he buries it with his next touch. And he's all, I
Unbelievable,
guess,
yeah.
here to the fans. He was just a
What a
lethal
guy.
striker.
Yeah,
Um,
lethal.
and then even in the David Moyes season, like the goals dropped off, but there were some big goals. He scored the winner against Arsenal, which is always great. I think he got the opener against Arsenal at Old Trafford in his first season at United. But then he got the winner against Arsenal in the next season. And then another moment in the David Moyes season was that hat trick against Olympiacos in the Champions League, because we were 2-0
Yeah.
down from the first leg. And then he got a hat trick in the second leg and sending us through to the next round then. So in his third season, then under Van Gaal, we all expected, because he scored that unbelievable diving header in the World Cup for Holland, and we thought, and Van Gaal, we knew at that point was going to take over at United. We thought these two were going to work well together as two Dutchmen who,
Hmm.
and he's already coached them with the national side, but it didn't really work out. He only got 10 goals in 29 games. I think he had more injury problems in his third season. And then Van Gaal ruthlessly told him on the golf course at the end of that season that he was letting him go, and he wasn't very happy about that. But yeah, by far his biggest contribution was those 30 goals that led to us winning the title. Because without signing him, now remember, Man City wanted him as well, and they had just won the
Yeah.
league in 2012, and it would have been a big blow to us if he had went there. But he chose to come to United, and I think he was the single biggest reason why we won that record-breaking title. So those are my reasons for putting RVP at number 7. Jerry, what do you think about that?
Yeah, he's a solid choice. And like you said, he was the difference maker in that 2012-2013 season. And I should mention, it's on Cork Reds today if anyone wants to have a look. On this day in 2012, we actually agreed to sign him from Arsenal. So it's a significant anniversary today. Today was the day we signed RVP, and went on to win our 20th title. But I would say transformational, a real transformational signing. Without him, I don't think we go on to win that league. If he goes to City, I think it probably goes to them, again. And it was just a sweet, sweet moment. And I was there the day he scored against Arsenal when he opened the scoring at Old Trafford when we beat them 2-1 in his first season. And we had that kit, that checkered home kit. Whenever I see it now, I just get flashbacks of Van Persie just banging goals in, And funny thing about Van Persie was when he was at Arsenal, I think he started out as a left winger, and he was more of a forward type roaming player for them, And he kind of obviously changed his game up and moved towards being a number 9 under Wenger as the years went on. And by the time he rocked up to Old Trafford, he was just an experienced killer of a goal machine, And we really got to see the best of him. And again, that final couple of seasons maybe weren't his best, but under Van Gaal, you had the likes of Falcao coming into the team as well, and Danny Welbeck was there as well the year before, and Rooney struck up a good partnership with Van Persie, I felt as well, particularly in that first season. But then again, Rooney could play with anyone. So yeah, solid choice there for number 7.
Um, so who's your number 7?
So this is where we changed things up a little bit. I've gone with Dwight York as my number 7. An iconic player. When you think of Dwight York, I suppose you automatically think of Andy Cole as well, and that magnificent partnership that they struck up in the treble season in particular, and of course into 99-2000 as well, the Millennium season, the Millennium title, where we won 2 in a row. They were just electric all year again. I suppose we go back to that Teddy Sheringham season in 2000-2001 where Yorkie's form kind of dipped a little bit. The highlight being probably that hat trick against Arsenal. You might recall a 6-1 win in 2001. But by then I felt Dwight York's powers were kind of waning a little bit and he was sort of losing his place. And when we signed Van Nistelrooy in 2001, the summer of 01, I think that was probably the death knell, I suppose, to his career. But at his peak, I think Dwight York was world class, one of the best strikers in the world, and he was unlucky not to get closer to winning the Ballon d'Or in 98, 99, that treble season. The goals he scored, sensational. I mean, he could do it all. He was very similar to Sheringham that way, where he could drop in and play off the front man and kind of link the play. That's what I liked about him. But he could also lead the line as well, and his partnership with Cole was just telepathic. Didn't have the best of pace, but he could really, really trap a ball, and he could finish as good as anyone. So Dwight York is my number 7. I think he was at 65 goals over 3 seasons, or 3.5 seasons, was it? Was he there 4 years in the end? I think so. Not a bad return, but I suppose just because it did dry up for him in the last year and a half, I think that's why he drops down my list, and that's why I place him in at number 7.
Yeah, so that brings me on nicely to my number 6, who is Dwight York. Um, I put him ahead of RVP because he won more at the club than RVP, and he had 2 prolific seasons. So as you've said, he got 29 goals in the treble winning season, but he followed that up with 23 in the next season, and then obviously it tailed off a bit. 12 in his third season, then only one in 16 appearances in his final season. But obviously Van Nistelrooy had been signed at that point, and his game time had been heavily reduced. And as you said, he got 65 goals overall, which is slightly higher than RVP as well. So considering he had more goals, more prolific seasons, and more trophies than RVP, that's my reason for putting him slightly ahead of him at number 6. So who is your number 6 then, Jerry?
Well, I've gone vice versa to you, Kyle. I've gone with Robin van Persie as number 6, just because the glory that he provided us in 2012-13, and for me and you, that's our last taste of winning the Premier League title. Um, and we would have grown up on a diet of premierships and trophies. So to see it dry up in this past decade has been unfortunate, but I've no doubt it'll come again in hopefully the not too distant future. But for Van Persie to single handedly fire us to the title that year and give us so many fantastic moments, that's why he's higher up on the list. I think fantastic finisher, one of the best left foots I've seen. He could score all types of goals, long range, set pieces, tap ins, headers, volleys. Really technical striker, and he was strong as well. Really wiry frame. Just a brilliant striker, and the fact that he kind of changed his position from a wide man to a forward as well was really impressive. And I know things similar to Dwight York, things kind of tailed off towards the end, but no, for me, that 2012-13 season was just one of the best individual seasons I've seen. Instant impact, and 24 million from Arsenal. Thank you very much. Worth every penny.
Yeah, a bargain in today's market, to say the least. So moving on to our top 5 then, and my number 5 is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and this is a man who needs no introduction whatsoever. I think he scored 126 goals overall for United, which is a good total for anyone. Across 11 seasons. His most prolific season was the 2001-02 season. Not a successful season for United, it has to be said, but he got 25 goals in that season. Um, but his most memorable moments probably came in that 98-99 season, scoring the winner, of course, in the Champions League final. And the 4 goals as a substitute against Nottingham Forest in that season was pretty remarkable as well. But another moment that he's remembered for, which is not a goal, is a Newcastle counter attack. I think it was the 97-98 season where Rob Lee was clean through and Solskjaer just scythed them down just outside the box and took the red card for the team. Uh, it was just a cynical tackle, but one that had to be made, and it gets replayed a lot um, on social media, especially when it's the anniversary of it. Um, but yeah, he had, of course, he had a number of injury issues throughout his career. In the 2002-3 season, he played a lot on the right wing because Beckham fell out of favour with Fergie, and he was very successful in that right wing position. He's scoring
Yeah.
15 goals, and I'm sure he got numerous assists as well. I do remember him playing at right wing at Highbury, and in the all
Yeah.
blue shirt, and he was fantastic that night. Um, and then he suffered badly with injuries between 2004 and 2006. In fact, across 2 seasons, in fact, one season he played 0 games, and that was the
Mm,
2004-5 season. Then he only made 5 appearances in the season after that. But Fergie obviously rated him so highly and thought he could be so impactful from the bench that not many managers would keep a player after making 5 appearances in 2 seasons due to injury. But then he made a big comeback in his final season in 2006-7 season, where he chipped in with 11 goals in 32 appearances and helped United to win back the title after a 4-year drought. So 366 appearances overall, 126 goals, which is a remarkable return for a man who is renowned for being a super sub. And obviously went on to manage United. Unfortunately, got very close to winning a trophy during that spell, but didn't manage to get over the line. It would have been nice to see a former player win trophies as a Man United manager, but that hasn't happened just yet. But Solskjaer came very close. Um, but yeah, he's just an absolute legend, and there's not a United fan in the world who doesn't love him.
mm.
So, what are your thoughts on that, Jerry?
Yeah, well, that leads me on to my number five as well, because my number five is none other than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yeah, just an icon, absolute icon of United, um, and really underrated. That's why I have Ole so high on my list. He's up there with the best finishers I've seen play for United. He could score all types of goals as well. And if he got a chance in and around the box, it's a goal. Just superb finisher, top class, and such a great guy as well. I think everyone was willing him to win a trophy with us and to take us on to the next level as manager. But unfortunately, for one reason or another, it didn't happen. But that takes absolutely nothing away from the caliber of player he was. Um, and when you think of a super sub, then I think there's no one in world football, in the history of football, that can compare to Solskjaer. Um, and I think he probably gets unfairly brushed as just a super sub, but he could offer so much more. Like you said, in that 01-02 season, he kind of started a lot of games after Andy Cole left in particular. And he was very effective, and he scored. Was it 25 goals you said that season? So it just showed he could do it as a starter equally as well. And he had that influence in 02-03, from the right wing. I remember he set up the equaliser for Giggs that night at Highbury. The cross from the right, and Giggsy heads it in for 2-2, and it gave us a big point on the road to another title. So there's nothing that I can add really to what you've already said. You've summed it up perfectly. He's a legend of the club, and was so happy to see him make his comeback from such a long injury layoff in 06-07, and get his hands on the title again. And again, that was an underrated season. He chipped in with a fair few goals, and there was a goal towards the end of April, I think it was, in the run-in against Blackburn at Old Trafford. You might remember that one. An important victory again. I think that was his final goal. So yeah, absolute legend of the club, and just iconic. When I see him now, I still get quite emotional, because I've just so many great memories of Ole Gunnar at United, and what a player. There's not, as you said, there's not a United fan out there that doesn't love Ole.
Yeah, and I think, and I know you like anniversaries. I think uh, on this day in 2002, I might be wrong. I think he scored the winner in the opening game of the season against West Brom. I remember that
It
so
is.
well. Every kid.
Yes, and just to not to go off on a tangent, but I listened to that game on the radio in the car actually. Unfortunately, we weren't always blessed to have Sky Sports as kids, but one of the means of catching United games back then for me anyway was via radio. And Today FM, the Irish station, used to do live commentary, Premiership live on a Saturday. And that was actually the featured game, the 3 o'clock game. I think it was the opening game of the season. West Brom came to Old Trafford and they frustrated us. But again, Ollie does what he does best and comes off the bench and scores the winner.
Yeah, I think I went to my local GAA club to catch that game as part of Super Sunday. I think Arsenal were playing Birmingham at Highbury that day. Or was it Liverpool against Birmingham? I'm not sure. But yeah, um, Solskjaer got the winner for United that day and got us off to a winning start to that season. Um, yeah, think it's also worth mentioning that he's such a likable guy as well. Such a nice guy, and you can't say that about every footballer. Sometimes footballers are accused of being arrogant and not always being friendly towards supporters. But Solskjaer is very much a lovely guy, a man of the people, and it would have been brilliant if he had been a successful manager. But he certainly gave it a good go, and he brought a lot. Even as a manager, he brought a lot of enjoyment to watching United again. There was
Yeah.
there was a lot that went right initially. That unbelievable run of 14 wins in his first 19 games, knocking PSG out of the Champions League against all the odds, and even finishing second in the league, finishing third in the league. And I know it kind of really tailed off at the end there whenever we signed Ronaldo and we started losing heavily in games and then he was dismissed. But it's easy to forget that things actually went really well during large parts of his time in charge, and it was entertaining to watch. But
Yeah.
whether he was successful as a coach or not, it doesn't really matter because his legacy was already intact, given his very successful 11 seasons at the club. You know,
Absolutely.
one slight regret is that if he'd have stayed on for one more season as a player, he could have got a second Champions League medal, and nobody would have deserved it more than him. But I think
Yeah.
he left in that '07 summer where he had his testimonial because he thought his knees just weren't up to it anymore. That was the thing that was holding him back in his last few seasons was knee injuries, and he
Hmm.
just thought that his body was telling him that it was time to let go, and that's what happened, unfortunately. But 11 seasons is remarkable, and that's a long stint at
Yeah.
any club, and he was exceptional. And as you said, he's such an underrated finisher. Um,
Top class.
Unbelievable. Like some of the goal like in the Champions League against Leon. Um,
Against Lille, yeah. Lille
Lille,
away
Lille.
in
Yeah,
2001, yeah. Top corner.
yeah. That was in the reversible away shirt. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
That was
white,
a
yeah. And
fantastic finish.
there was a goal as well, Kyle. Sorry, just quickly. One of my earliest memories of volley was against Bordeaux away in the Champions League, and a lot of our viewers will probably remember this goal where we were playing Bordeaux away, and Raymond van der Houw just hoops the ball up over the top, and Ollie straight off the bench, first touch, just cushions the ball like a feather, beats two men, and just side foots it past the keeper for the winning goal. So if you haven't seen that goal, go onto YouTube. United against Bordeaux from 2000. Typical Ollie. It really gives you a glimpse of what he was good at, and such an underrated finisher. There's all this talk about the best finishers in the Premiership era or the Premier League era. I think he's right up there with the best of them.
Yeah, absolutely. At any other club, he would have been the starting striker week in and week out. But we were blessed with so many unbelievable strikers. He was often used from the bench, but I think he did get his fair few. He did get a fair few starts as well, and sometimes that gets overlooked. There was a lot of rotation, and he didn't like. Some people would have you believe that he never started any games, that he was always on the bench. That wasn't the case. There was a lot of rotation. He did start games, and as we talked about earlier, not just up front. In 02-03 season, he played as a right winger, and he filled
Mm,
in
yeah.
superbly in that role. So moving on to our top four, and at number four, I have went with Andy Cole, uh, and it's quite difficult to actually put him that low, but that tells you the caliber of the players that are going to be in the top three. So Andy Cole signed for United in 1995, and he left in 2001. Again, the signing of Van Nistelrooy obviously impacted his minutes, and he decided to move on to play more regular. But I think he said in more recent times that he wish he had have stayed on longer, and maybe just accepted his role as the second choice striker. He said he was maybe too overeager to go and play regularly at Blackburn, and I think he said he regretted that in an interview. We said he stayed at United a bit longer, and we all would have been
Yeah.
happy to see that. So
Mm,
he came in '95, and I think Keith Gillespie went the other way to Newcastle as part of the deal, and they were six very, very successful seasons at the club. He got 121 goals overall in 275 appearances. Um, 12, and like it took a wee while to get going. 12 in his first season and 13 in the second. Uh, Only seven in 96, 97 season. But then he really started to hit his stride in those you know late 90, early 90s years where in 97, 98 he smashed in 25 goals, then 24 in the treble winning season, then 99 2000 he hit 22. So these are prolific seasons from United's number 9, and then 13 then in 2000, 2001, and then in 2001, 2002, I think he played 15 games, and then he scored 5 goals in that spell. But I think he left, about midway through that season, because,
mm.
as I said, his game time was reduced due to bringing in Van Nistelrooy. But you know, he was very, very underrated, especially by England managers. I couldn't believe the statistics that he had 15 England caps and 1 goal. Um, because they were blessed with so many strikers in the late 90s, he didn't really get a look in. I think also the England managers in the between the mid to late 90s had to make a choice between him and Teddy Sheringham because they didn't get along. Um, I- Apparently there was Cole told the story of something to do with his debut as an
Mm,
England striker. He came on as a sub, and Teddy Sheringham didn't acknowledge him when he came on for Teddy and for his England debut. And even when they were both at United, they didn't speak. And only in recent times have they met up and
mm,
became friends. So it was well known, even amongst United fans, that these two didn't even talk, didn't get along. But even when they played together, they were still fantastic. You know, they linked up really well. It just shows you the professionalism that we had at the time. It's hard to imagine nowadays players who openly didn't like each other actually playing well together. I couldn't imagine it happening in this era, but it did back then.
no.
That was how professional they were. And Andy Cole was a fantastic striker for United. So 121 goals is a brilliant return in anyone's book, and an absolute legend, Jerry. So does he make it into your top four?
He does. He makes it into my top four, but he doesn't. He doesn't feature at number four. But yeah, Andy Cole is a brilliant player, and again another an iconic player from the 90s and into the 2000s as well. And always going to be associated with that brilliant treble winning team, and his partnership with York that I mentioned at the start there was just electric. I don't think we'll ever, if you think of iconic duos in the Premiership era or even in English football as a whole, I think Cole and York just is at the top of the tree. Um, that partnership will never be beaten for me. And even individually, Andy Cole was just so good. The pace and finishing was just fantastic. And he could score all types of goals as well. Headers, volleys, side foot. Acrobatic efforts. Remember a few bicycle kicks from that 99-2000 season as well that he scored. I think one against Leicester at Old Trafford springs to mind. He was just superb. An all round brilliant number nine. And he could do it all. Linked up so well with so many different players, and like you said, he could have. Who knows? He might have forged a partnership with Van Nistelrooy had he stayed on a bit longer. But I think that was at a juncture where Ferguson wanted to move on to playing more of a 4-4-1-1, particularly in Europe. I think we saw with Seba Veron coming into the side and Paul Scholes playing a more of a withdrawn number 10 role, even behind Van Nistelrooy. So I think Coley just saw his minutes decreasing and rightly probably went to seek out some first team football, which he got at Blackburn. And I think it's forgotten as well that he actually linked up with Dwight York again at Blackburn Rovers the following season. I think they did well there as well, didn't they? Win the Worthington Cup, as it was known at the time. But yeah, it's Cole, brilliant striker and a great choice.
Yeah, I think the most memorable link up between York and Cole was in the new camp, wasn't it? And that was right at the beginning of their partnership.
Yeah,
And the symmetry was just unbelievable. The 1-2, 1-2, and in that 3 each draw, I think they were involved in all the goals together, and that was probably the beginning of an unbelievable partnership. And obviously, that partnership more or less won us the Champions League. They might not have got the crucial goals in the finals, but they certainly contributed heavily to us getting there. Andy Cole, of course, scored the winning goal away at Juventus in the semi final.
yeah,
He scored the crucial equaliser against Tottenham in the final game of the season in '99, the lob over Ian Walker. That was
mm,
such an important goal because we needed a breakthrough after being 1-0 down, thanks to a goal from Les Ferdinand. And I'm sure
yeah,
as United fans, we were all worried that we were going to blow it on the final day of the season and hand to Arsenal. So there was a lot of anxiety around, and he obviously got rid of that anxiety with that wonderful. No, it was the winning goal actually. It was Beckham scored the equaliser, which was another fantastic finish. Now
yeah.
Beckham never scored a tap in, did he? Um,
No,
Andy Cole got the winner, I think, just shortly after half time. I think that lob
yeah,
over
and I
Ian
think
Walker.
just as you're speaking there now, that iconic commentary from Martin Tyler is just flooding back into my mind. Andy Cole, can he get it over Walker? Just brilliant stuff. And what a goal! He always scored some vital goals throughout his career, particularly in that season. And it was ironic how it was Sheringham and Solskjaer actually scored a winner in the European Cup final, but looking back throughout the season as a whole, it was Cole and York that were the driving force really, as the starting strikers, as the starting duo, I suppose, up front. Just electric, great player, Andy
I
Cole,
think,
and of course he never scored penalties. He never took penalties either, which just is
no,
another feather in his cap.
yeah, out of all the goals he scored for United, only one of them was a penalty. And most strikers, their stats are padded with penalties, but not him. And remember, he's in the top four of the most prolific strikers in the Premier League. Full stop.
Yeah,
So that just has how good he
yeah,
was and how absurd it was that he wasn't being picked for England. And Clayton Hoddle claimed that he needed too many chances to score a goal. That's absolutely absurd. And some people blamed him for not winning the title in 1995 because he missed a few chances against West Ham on the final day of the season. Their goalkeeper had an absolute stormer that day, and he was somehow blamed for that. I think he got just a unfair criticism at times, but his goal record speaks for itself. And as you said, him and York linked up again at Blackburn Rovers. They just seemed to click right away. A bit like Rooney and Henrik Larsson, it just clicked from the first time they played together. They didn't need to get to know each other. They just had that chemistry right away. So I just want to
yeah,
come to uh, Rishi in the comments who says that his top 10. Now he's including players from the 90s now that didn't play in the 21st century, but he says his top 10 United strikers are Cantona, Cole, Van Nistelrooy, Rooney, Van Persie, Tevez, Solskjaer, York, Sheringham, and Hughes. Yeah, so if we were including players from the 90s, definitely Cantona and Hughes would be making it in there. He says, I know Tevez is controversial, but the '08 season with Rooney and Ronaldo was best, most fluid front three we had. Yeah, we had both of us put Tevez at number 10. And he says Coley left to give himself the best chance of making the World Cup 2002 squad. Souness
Yes.
lied and made him promises he couldn't keep. Coley wanted to fight him. Yeah, not the only player who wanted to fight Graham Souness. Would have thought, but yeah, that was a fruitless endeavour because he never became a regular for England. As I said, only 15 caps, which is absolutely outrageous
Mm.
for the fourth all-time top scorer in Premier League history, and he had only played 15 times for his country, and a lot of those were probably sub appearances. So that was just absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. But he is revered at Old Trafford, and no matter what England fans or managers think, he is a legendary striker. So who is your number four then, Jerry?
So my number four is the only player on this list that is currently still playing, and that is Mr. Cristiano Ronaldo. Um, Controversial one maybe because a lot of people would have him higher up, Ballon d'Or winner, but he falls into number four for me just because a lot of his career was spent out on the wing, um, playing as a right or left winger, and gradually then working his way to a more fluid forward. Um, in his latter part of his first spell at United, I think he was never really an out and out number nine during that first spell. He was more of a roaming forward type player who interchanged positions with Rooney and Tevez, and Saha before that. And I know he did go on to score 42 goals in that amazing 07-08 season, and that's probably his best season at United, I think, individually. And he was good again the following season, 08-09, winning the league again and picking up that Ballon d'Or at the end of 2008 must have been a huge accolade for him, his first one in his career. It's fantastic to see as a United fan. Someone from your own team winning the Ballon d'Or was just a great honour as a United fan that time. I would have been about 18. You were the same, I suppose, Kyle. And it was really cool to see Ronaldo winning the Ballon d'Or. But he then came back in 2021, and he played as an out and out number nine then, and he had another prolific season under Ollie, and under Ollie and Ralph Ragnick, I suppose, yeah. So Ollie got sacked halfway through the season. Ragnick came in. It didn't quite work under Eric Ten Hag, and of course we know how it went after that, where he left in acrimonious circumstances. But yeah, and a legend of the club and a great player, but he doesn't quite make my top three. So I'm going to put Ronaldo in at number four. But again, one of the best players I've seen in my time supporting United. I think there's no question about that.
Yeah, so I have him as number three, for all the reasons that you've outlined. And the reason why I'm putting him as high as three is because of that 42 goal season in which United won the league and the Champions League, and he was a big part of that. It could have been a treble season had we have overcome Portsmouth on that day in which we somehow lost, where Rio Ferdinand went into goals for the penalty after
Mm,
Thomas Kuszek was sent off. We Ronaldo should have been given a penalty that day for when Distan barged him over. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so easily could have been a treble that season, but nevertheless, he was probably the single biggest factor in us winning the league and Champions League, and he scored a header in the final from a left-footed cross on Wes Brown, and not often you can say that. And just was a in his first 3 seasons at United, he was a youngster who was learning his craft. Uh, and then after that World Cup 2006, that's when he really started coming into his own. He started
Mm,
being a prolific goal scorer for United, and in that 3 season block, um, between '06 and '09, he was unbelievable for United. Um, and the best one was that 42 goal season. I think he got 23 in '06, '07 when we regained the title. Then the 42 game season. Then '03, '09 was kind of a bonus season because he was supposed to go to Madrid that summer, but he was persuaded to give
yeah.
us one more year. And then I think he got something like 26 goals or something. And there's some big goals in there. Everybody remembers that outrageous strike against Porto in the Champions League quarterfinals. I think he was closer to the
Mm,
halfway line than he was to the penalty area when he unleashed that shot. And the legendary commentating from Martin Taylor and Andy Gray again there, and when that flew
yeah.
into the corner of the net, the goalkeeper had no chance, despite how far out he was when he unleashed that rocket. Um, he scored a couple of crucial goals in the comeback win against Tottenham at Old Trafford in that season. And then 2 goals against Arsenal in the Champions League semi-final. One was a free kick from ridiculously far out, where Clive Tisley again with a legendary piece of commentary for that goal. Um, and then he scored that iconic counter-attacking goal to make it 3-0, involving Rooney and Park. United all in blue that night. We just wiped the floor with Arsenal in that Champions League semi-final and put the tie to bed in the first 20 minutes of the second leg, basically. Um,
Mm,
yeah, and as you've said, he came back. Then he spent his prime years at Real Madrid, in which he had an unbelievable record of scoring more goals than he played games for Real Madrid. And then he played for Juve for a few seasons, and then he made that dramatic comeback to United. Had a prolific season, as you touched upon. Um, he scored. I think he scored a goal every other game in that season, and overall, I think he scored 118 goals in his first spell at United, and then he scored 27 in 54 games in that short spell he had back at the club. But unfortunately, it was interrupted because one, we didn't qualify for the Champions League, and he wanted to play in the Champions League. That was his first reason for wanting out. And then Ten Hag relegated him to the bench, which is inexcusable considering Ronaldo's departure led to us bringing in Wout Weghorst, who's just nowhere near the level of Ronaldo, to say the least. So we really could have done with him there. I think he was picking Martial ahead of him, and that's a very, very controversial decision. Uh, I didn't get the logic of Ten Hag there. I mean, 99 out of 100 managers, if you got Ronaldo at your disposal, you're going to play him. You might rest him here and there, given his age, but he should have been the starting striker for United, in my opinion. And then obviously that led to his unceremonious departure involving Piers Morgan. Um, but overall, he had 145 goals for United, which ranks him as one of the highest of all time. And he's like one of the best footballers of all time. So, and he won pretty much everything at Old Trafford. So that's why he scored in the FA Cup final against Millwall, didn't he? And in his first season as well. Um, yeah, so
yes.
he did win absolutely everything at United, and he had a remarkable goal record, and yeah, one of the best players of all time. So that's why he makes it just slightly ahead of Andy Cole at number 3. And I do acknowledge that he wasn't always a number 9, but he certainly was at times in his last season, during his first spell. If you remember in the match I talked about against Arsenal and in the final against Barcelona, he was the number 9. But then obviously later in his career, he was exclusively a number 9, and that's what we saw from him in the second spell at United. So that's why he makes it in as a striker. So number 3 for me. And you've already talked about Ronaldo. So um, let me know who is your number 3.
So I've gone the opposite to you with this one, and I've gone with Andy Cole as my number three. I just think, yeah, what Cole achieved and the goals he scored in the 90s and into the 2000s, I just feel that bit more of a warmth towards him than Ronaldo. Ronaldo, not that I lost respect for him, but I don't think he ended things the right way with United. Doing that interview with Pierce Morgan, for his second spell, and of course in his um, first time at United, he angled for a move to Real Madrid for about 2 years. If you remember back, he wanted to go in '08, and again in the following season he wanted to go, and he got his wish. So that kind of did leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And I suppose the fact he went on and played his best football at Real Madrid, kind of drops him down the list a little bit. So that's why I've gone Andy Cole number three. Just Coley, an absolute legend, not only at United but a Premier League legend. If you think of Premiership icons since the dawn of the Premier League back in 1992, Andy Cole, I think, is front and center. He's up there with all the top boys like Shearer and Cantona and Keane and all those faces that you'd see on any Sky Sports montage. Coley should be up there, and I think it's about time he gets the credit he deserves. As probably one of the top two or three strikers in the Premiership era.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fair to say that Andy Cole is probably more popular universally among the United fan base than Ronaldo. Some United fans would point to the fact that he left us twice,
Mm,
um, and and he spent his prime years at Real Madrid. So I certainly understand your logic in picking Andy Cole ahead of Ronaldo. Um, I probably, even myself, I probably like Andy Cole more than I like Ronaldo. But I suppose I chose him for the reasons I outlined, that he's one of the best players to ever play the game, and that
mm,
42 goal season in which we won the league and Champions League probably just ranks him a little bit above. But certainly, I wouldn't dispute anyone who would put Andy Cole ahead of him. Um, yeah, I think if Ronaldo stayed at United a bit longer, I think he might even be top of both our lists. If he spent his Rather than going to Real Madrid, if he'd have stayed at United until he was 30, then I think he would have been top here easily. But as it is, he's uh, third in my list and fourth on yours. So Andy Cole definitely worthy of being third on your list, absolutely. On another day, I could have put them in different positions, but it's just one of those things that you just have to make a decision. Sometimes it's really hard to do, especially when you're ranking United strikers. So now we're getting into
mhm.
the real creme de la creme. The top two best strikers in the last 25 years, and these are legends of the highest ilk. And I think I know who both of them are going to be on both their lists. And so coming in at number two, and it's difficult to even put him at number two, is Ruud van Nistelrooy. Um, and I know his goal record without even looking it up. It's 150 goals in 219 games, which is absolutely remarkable. Um, in his first season, he hit 36 goals. In his second season, he hit 44 goals. And we talked about Ronaldo at 42 game season. Van Nistelrooy hit 44. Then another 30 in his third season. Um, and then I think for some reason he only got 16 in 04, 05, in
I
27
think he
games
had a
and made
knee
it.
injury.
Mm,
Sorry, he
yeah,
had a knee injury that season.
yeah. I knew by the number of appearances that there must have been injury problems there. And I know he would have signed for United a year earlier if it wasn't for a knee injury that he sustained during training in PSV. And Ferguson was so determined to get him, he waited a year and then brought him in
Mhm,
despite that serious injury. And then his final season, in which he kind of fell out of favour, wasn't picked for the League Cup final. He still got 24 goals in 47 appearances. Um, yeah, a remarkable striker, absolutely prolific. Even when he went to Real Madrid, his first season he got 33 goals for them. I think out of the 150 he got for United, I think he only scored one from outside the box. Was against Charlton Athletic. I think he scored twice in that game.
Yeah.
His other goal in that match was like an individual run from Wayne Rooney, beating several defenders, and then playing it over to the chipping the ball at the outside of his right foot into the path of Van Nistelrooy, who chased it down with his back to goal and swiveled and then volleyed into the corner. Absolutely lethal finisher. One of his standout goals is probably against Fulham, that individual strike where he picked the ball up on halfway, took it past a few Fulham players, and then side footed it past the keeper. Um, and obviously a prolific penalty taker as well. Very rarely missed. One of the few occasions he missed was against Arsenal, if he, in that in September 2003 in their unbeaten season.
Yes.
If he had buried that penalty, they wouldn't have had that stupid invincible season that they still go on about to this day. But
Yeah.
he made up for it when he scored the penalty to end their unbeaten run in the following season. But absolutely prolific goal scorer, hat trick getter, um, uh, braces. He was just an unstoppable striker, and his goal record in like 44 goals in 52 games is unbelievable. The only thing that is unfortunate about his time at the club is that he only won one Premier League title, one FA Cup, and one League Cup, of which he didn't play in the final. Now, it's just the timing of his 5 years. It's just
Mm-hmm.
coincided with a bit of a drought in terms of trophies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so he just came at the end of that spell where we won three in a row, and then
Yeah.
we won the title in the second season. Then we went on a 4 year drought without winning the title, despite his goals. And yeah, so he would probably his 5 years at the club were one of the leanest periods during Ferguson's reign, unfortunately. But take nothing away from the
Yes.
individual, he was incredible. So who is your number two then, Jerry?
So my number two is Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. So we're in agreement with number two on our list. And again, what can be said that you haven't already said? Just an incredible striker. And I actually give him the honour as the best finisher I've ever seen at Man United. The best out and out finisher. I'm talking about actual scoring goals and finishing them inside the box. He was just unmatched. And I think he had a running battle for the Golden Boot with Thierry Henry for his first couple of seasons, and just from minute one he just hit it off totally. I think the first time I saw him play was against Celtic in Ryan Giggs's testimonial at Old Trafford, and I think he scored twice that night. And from then on, it was just goal, 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 goal. Just superb. What a player. Um, I found it really tough not to have him at number one. I went back and over in my head, should I put Ruud in at number one? But I decided to put him in at number two, and that'll become clear in a while, I think, when we reveal our top choice. But um, unbelievable player, best finisher I ever saw, and it's just a privilege to have witnessed him play for my club. Um, and like you said, it was an unfortunate quirk that we didn't win much during Ruud's time at the club, but I think that was just because it was a transitional time at Man United. Um, that three in a row team from '99 to 2001 was being broken up, and that was Ruud was part of that. Ruud and Varane were brought in, and we had a new look about us for 0102, and it didn't quite click, but it did click in 2002, 2003 when we stormed back and hauled Arsenal back and won the league from a position where we had no right to win, really. I think he was just sensational in that season. That was the year where he did get that brilliant dribble goal against Fulham at Old Trafford. And he scored at Highbury as well. Remember where he outpaced Sol Campbell and
Yeah,
clipped it over the goalkeeper. I think his son, Liam Van Nistelrooy, scored a very similar goal there the other day for PSV. It's remarkable, his running style is just like looking at Ruud at his peak, But yeah, what was it? 03, 04, he carried on that good form, and we were very unlucky not to win the league in 03-04. I think that was the season where we really should have gone on and won two in a row again. But Rio Ferdinand got banned, I think, that season, and that played a big part in us not going on to win the league. Arsenal, who went unbeaten, had a lot of draws that year. And they were far from invincible, really, because we actually beat them in the FA Cup, and I take great pleasure in reminding Arsenal fans of that. So, yeah, Ruud van Nistelrooy in at number two. Brilliant player. It was a shame how it ended, but I think Ferguson wanted to move away from the style that we had in the early 2000s. And again, he wanted a bit more of a fluid strike force with Luis Saha coming in and linking up well with Rooney Ronaldo.
Yeah, it probably seemed harsh to move on Jurgen Cole so soon after 99, but you can see why they dropped down the pecking order when you seen how prolific Van Nistelrooy was.
Mm,
As you said, the most prolific striker that I've ever seen in my lifetime in
lethal,
for any club. Uh, and then when Van Nistelrooy himself, it seemed harsh to drop him for Louis Saha and then let him go to Real Madrid in '06. But then you could see again what Ferguson was trying to do, because we went on to win absolutely everything after that. Just
yeah. Mm,
Ferguson was absolutely ruthless when some of the legends that he just got rid of, who essentially just left through the back door and weren't even sometimes they weren't even afforded a face-to-face meeting to tell them that they were leaving. We know that that
mm,
was definitely the case when it come to David Beckham. Um, but yeah, it just shows you how good we were. What a top team we were, that we could afford to just ruthlessly cut these absolute legends of the game, and still win things after they left. Um, these the players that Ferguson got rid of in this era, we could only dream of having them in the United squad right now. And Van
yeah,
Nistelrooy was certainly one of those. Yeah, my only regret is that he didn't play for the club longer and didn't win more trophies while he was at the club. He probably his
yeah.
goals deserved more trophies.
And I think
Um,
for the younger generation of fans now, I think who haven't seen Van Nistelrooy play, who are too young to remember Van Nistelrooy playing, I think you think of Haaland and Man City now, and that's the type of output he had. But he had way more to his game. He was faster and more agile than Haaland and had a better touch as well. Um, illustrated by that goal you mentioned there against Charlton, where he cushioned it on his chest and swiveled and volleyed. That's just a memorable strike. But yeah, he had the output of say a Haaland, but he had the skill of a really top class number nine as well. Even though he wore 10, Ruud always wore 10 for United, so that was an interesting choice as well.
yeah, absolutely unbelievable striker, and the fact that he only played 5 seasons at the club, and we're putting him at number two, this tells you the caliber of striker that he was. And yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth there when you mentioned Liam Van Nistelrooy. We've all saw that clip today of him scoring a goal that we saw Van Nistelrooy score on several occasions, running from the halfway line, outpacing his man, and then clipping it over the goalkeeper. I think his son scored that for PSV in an under 19s match. It's already got me thinking, God, if he is as good as that clip suggests, we need to get him to Old Trafford. Because I tell you what, there's no
Sign him
need
up.
for yeah, there's no need for a DNA test if he's scoring goals like that. He's got it in his genes, and yeah, let's hope that and I seen RVP's son score a vital goal for Feyenoord, the senior team there, not so long ago. So I tell you what, there could be opportunities for us to get some second generation players.
And you've got
At,
Kai Rooney as well.
oh yeah, he's been doing well at United. Unfortunately, his season was ended through injury last term, but hopefully he'll get back to scoring in the coming season. And he's a left-footed player, so that's very new, because
Interesting.
his, his his father certainly wasn't a left-footed player. But I could see watching the clips of him, I can see a lot of his father in him. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
hugely exciting also. So number one is it just has to be the United's top goal scorer of all time, and that is Wayne Rooney, um, who had 13 very, very fruitful seasons at the club, and with a whole host of strike partners who clicked with nearly all of them. And you know, he came in as an 18-year-old. He left at 31, and his best years, unlike Ronaldo, his best years were very much at Old Trafford, and he won just everything. He captained the club. He played as a number 9, a number 10, a left winger, even a midfielder under Louis van Gaal. He made him captain of the club. Um, and his first season, he got 17, then 19, then 23 by his third season, and then 18 goals, then 20, then 34, and then 34 2 seasons later again. Those were his best seasons when he was playing as a number 9, in terms of goals. He got 34 in that season which Ronaldo left in 09-10, and then he got 34 again in the 2011-12 season. Both seasons we were pipped to the title there, but individually they were prolific for Wayne Rooney. And then he continued to score goals throughout his United career. The only time he dropped to single digits was in his final season under Mourinho when he just became a substitute. Really, he got 8 goals in 39 games, but he still made an appearance when United won the Europa League in his final appearance. But he won he won everything. Um, he won the league. What was it? 5 times, I think. He won the Champions League. He won the FA Cup as captain. He played a vital role in that. Do you remember the individual run he went on to
Yeah.
set up Mata's equaliser? He just decided to take the game by the scruff of the neck there after Crystal Palace took the lead through Jason Punchin. He decided he was just going to beat every Palace player and set up the equaliser in that match. And then yeah, there's so many moments you could point to. The overhead kick against City is probably his most iconic moment. Uh, and the volley against Newcastle very early on was an incredible goal. One minute he's arguing with the referee, next minute he turns around and he just smashes the ball into the net from about 30 yards. Shea given absolutely no chance. Um, you know, you got two iconic winners at Anfield. Yeah, multiple goals against Arsenal. Um, Both in iconic counter-attacking goals against Arsenal. Um, yeah, he was just an unbelievable player. He could play in about 4 different positions. He probably could have played right back, left back. I think that's what was said about him by many commentators, that he could have played any position on the field, but obviously to get the best out of him, you want to play him as an attacker. But yeah, he was so versatile. If he'd played at number 9 his whole career, he probably would have got more goals than the 253 he got, which is still a record for United, and 559 appearances as well. So he's probably one of the greatest United players of all time. Then Jerry, does he make it into your number 1 spot?
Yes, he does. Rooney is at number 1 on my list as well. Just an iconic player as well, throughout the Premier League era. Probably has the honour of being my favourite, up there with Roy Keane as my favourite ever United player. Just unbelievable from the moment he walked through the doors at Carrington to when he walked out. He was just superb. Could do it all as a striker. Could play up front on his own. Could play left wing, right wing, number 10, second striker. Could score every type of goal. He was a raging bull in his first couple of seasons. Just rampaging around and you know harrying defenders and winning the ball back and scoring unbelievable goals. Chips and volleys and overhead kicks and headers. Just a superb player, and the biggest compliment I could give him as well. He was able to partner any sort of a striker. You remember in his early days, he played up front with Van Nistelrooy, and then of course Louis Saha. after that, and Ronaldo and Tevez and Van Persie and
Larson.
Larsson and Henrik Larsson and even Ibrahimovic later on, is just he could play with anyone, and that's a testament to him. And 253 goals, our all-time top scorer. I don't think there's much more I can say to that you haven't already said because he's just iconic. And he's rightfully, I think, number one on the list, just ahead of Van Nistelrooy.
He definitely repaid that 27 million transfer fee that we paid for him. Seems like chump change,
Yeah.
given what would he what would he be worth in today's market? It must have, like, if you
Uh,
think, yeah, I mean, you look what Alexander Isak has cost, Morgan Rogers has cost, Elliot Anderson, Wayne Rooney would be 200 million in today's market.
yeah,
Absolutely.
at least, if not more, I'd say 250. He'd be double what
And
Isaac and all those boys were.
he's he was such a rare talent in that he was like almost a finished article when he was 18. He burst onto the scene at Everton when he was 16, scoring that iconic goal against Arsenal to end another one of their unbeaten runs. He seemed to be involved in both their unbeaten runs coming to an end. No wonder they despise him so much. And during his time at United, he scored goals against Arsenal for fun. I know
Yeah,
he is their, in terms of enemy number one at the Emirates, it's Wayne Rooney, isn't it? And I just love that, to be honest. And yeah, his goal catalogue is so vast. I know I've named a few of them, but there's so many of them I'm leaving out. Do you remember even the counter attacking goal at Arsenal under Van Gaal? Um,
yeah,
in the blue shirts, he scored that clip over the goalkeeper after running free from, I think, Di Maria played him in.
yeah.
Um,
2014, yeah. So
yeah,
he
he
was
was.
still doing it up until he was still doing it to Arsenal up until that point.
Yeah.
And of course he had that one in 2010 as well, 2009-10, where Nani ran the length of the pitch to set him up. Remember that one? The
Oh yeah,
black
and
kit,
the black kit with the blue
the
sash.
blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and he was involved in that Ronaldo counter-attacking goal in the Champions League semi-final in '09. He was the one who set up Ronaldo there. I think his pace was probably so underrated. And he's probably not someone
Yeah,
who's considered a fast player, but he definitely was. Um, at times he was given roles like against Barcelona to track Donny Alves, and like, you're kind of wasting Wayne Rooney when you're asking him to do roles like that. But
yeah.
he was very a non-selfish player, wasn't he? He just did what
He
was
was,
asked of him.
and I think those two seasons where he played as an out and out number nine in 2009-10 and again in 2011-12, I think where he scored 34 goals, it really showcased, how good a player he was as the leading striker. But I think he says himself in interviews that he's given after that he much preferred to play as part of a duo or as a number 10 even, because he was more involved in the game. And I think he preferred to be involved rather than being that focal point.
Yeah, do you remember he got four in one game against Hull? I think it was by
Yeah.
January 2010, something like that. And Hull are now
Yes,
back
and
in the Premier League. And do you remember Bald
that
Rooney?
season, yeah, in 2008, yeah, remember against Hull where he tackles that player and then drives him in over the line. Yeah, it's brilliant. But just to go back to that 09-10, the 09-10 season, I think he was on such an upward curve that year. I think we would have won the Champions League again if he didn't get injured against Bayern Munich. Do you remember that ankle injury? I think the viewers will probably remember, where he missed the run-in. He missed that game against Chelsea. We lost out on the title. So that was disappointing.
Yeah, yeah, oh, he was absolutely on fire in that season. Um, and he picked up an injury in the first leg against Bayern, but then remarkably he gave us about 55 minutes in the second leg. Despite his injury, he must have got a painkilling injection and just played on. And then I think
Yeah,
Berbatov came on after 55 minutes, but he was never expected to play any part in that second leg, given the severity of his injury in the first leg. But he remarkably just played. That was the type of player that he was. Do you remember against West Brom New Year's Day? He went off injured but
Yeah,
United made all three subs and he just hobbled back on again. That was the
yeah,
type of player that he was.
committed
Um,
to the end. You know, his commitment was probably one of his biggest strengths.
yeah. He could have played for any club in the world. Um, we kind of lucky that he's from the northwest of England, and you know he wasn't Portuguese like Ronaldo, who saw Real Madrid as the pinnacle. He was just one
Mm,
of those, and very much an English player. He was happy just to stay near his family in the northwest of England, and we benefited from that. Just an iconic striker, as you said. He just gelled with absolutely everybody. It's so many partners that he's synonymous with. In case
yeah.
the question is the question isn't is Wayne Rooney the best Man United striker of the 21st century? The question that needs answered is who's his best partner, and that's gonna cause a lot of debate among fans. Um, so I know it's really hard to choose. So who would you say was Rooney's best partner?
For me, I think straight away, Carlos Tevez. I think there was a lot of talk when we signed Tevez before he ever played for us that they were too similar. That Rooney and Tevez wouldn't hit it off because they were too similar at style of player and stature and in game style as well. But straight away they were fantastic together. I think Rooney actually missed a few games. He picked up an injury against Reading, um, but once he came back and got fit again, you know, they were superb, and it was just a shame that they couldn't really continue that partnership. When after Berbatov came in, I know Brushy made the point earlier that it kind of disrupted things for Tevez, you know, and that was a shame really that Rooney and Tevez couldn't continue that partnership for longer than the one season.
Aye, unbelievable duo. It would have been nice if the Tevez spent the prime of his career at Old Trafford, and him and Rooney would have been even more legendary than Jurgen Cole if that had been the case. But yeah, we were told that they were too similar. They couldn't play together, and they just clicked. Yeah, I think the most memorable goal that they scored as a duo was the goal against Middlesbrough, where they
Yes,
played the
great
1-2 and
goal.
there's the back heel. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think Tevez plays it in into Rooney. Rooney back heels it back into the path of Tevez, who slots it into the corner. Yeah, that was just a sample of how they clicked and played together. They were just it's just a real shame that we didn't see it for longer. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think Tevez is probably his best partner. Of which there were many. RVP certainly was up there. Van Nistelrooy, of course, as well. Rooney and Ronaldo were an
Zaha.
iconic. Rooney and Ronaldo were an iconic duo. Rooney and Saha, Rooney and Larson for even that small period. Do you remember they clicked on day one as well against Villa in the FA
Mm,
Cup?
yeah,
Uh, it was as if they've been playing together for 10 years. Of course, he linked up with Berbatov well also, and yeah, and Ibrahimovic, like you mentioned. So I just want to give an honourable mention to people who didn't make the list. Now I'll name two, and then you might want to come in with one or two more. So Ibra and Cavani. Now, if these players had played for United a bit longer, they might have been had a chance of making the list. Because Ibra's first season at United, he was exceptional. Likewise, Cavani. Um, of course, Ibra got a serious injury at the end of his first season. On his second season, we signed Lukaku, and he didn't play as much when he came back from injury. And Cavani then had an unbelievable first season at United. Again, he didn't play too much in his second season because Ronaldo was signed and took his jersey, and then he lost his place in the team, which is a real shame. But I thought those two were world class in their first seasons at United, but just weren't quite the club long enough to make this list. And as I've said, Larson during that 3 month spell was an unbelievable player, and would have loved to have seen him stay longer. So, uh, Chicharito, there's a striker who would be a legendary striker for most clubs, but doesn't make it into the top 10 here. He was a bit like Solskjaer, a super sub, but equally he was dangerous even when he started games. But so often he got United out of jail when he came off the bench. Probably his um, most memorable contribution. I think he had a hat trick away at Villa when we were 2-0 down. That was probably his
Mm,
best game. We all remember the header with the back of his head against Stoke, scoring the
mm.
winner in that match. And even in his debut in the Charity Shield, I think he kicked the ball up himself and he scored. Yeah, he just had a knack of the being in the right place at the right time, and he was just an arch poacher. So, is there anyone else that you would like to mention, Jerry?
Yeah, I would have gone with Chicharito as well. Like you said, he just had a knack of being in the right place at the right time, and a real goal poacher that we hadn't seen really since the likes of Van Nistelrooy. I suppose he was a real fox in the box, and he had shades of Solskjaer as well, which he's finishing. Wasn't blessed really with the most technical skill, but he made up for it with his timing and his impact. I'll never forget that goal against Stoke that you mentioned there with the back header. That was just a real piece of genius on his part. A great celebration as well after that game. Really enjoyed Chicharito's spell at United. Scored some big goals. And the other one I would add to the list, and he was very unlucky not to make it into my top 10, and that'd be Louis Saha. Um, One of the best all-round strikers I've seen at United. He had everything bar fitness. I think he just couldn't stay fit in the end, and but when we signed him, he hit the ground running straight away and scored some brilliant goals in that 03-04 season from January onwards. Um, Looked really top class, and it's a pity we didn't have him in the Champions League that season when we went out to Porto. Remember, Saha was cup tied, um, or he wasn't registered for the Champions League or something like that. He couldn't play in Europe anyway. But that kind of cost us, I think. If we had Saha against Porto, who knows what might have happened, because he was in a real hot streak for his first 6 months at United, and even I think his best spell came between 05-06 and 06-07. Where he came back and he went from being a player with a mop of black hair to being a shaven head killer almost. In 2006, he scored against Fulham on opening day, and that he scored another great goal against Chelsea. He scored against Blackburn at Ewood Park as well, in 2006, and he was on a real good run until again injury struck, unfortunately, and I think that's when Henrik Larsson kind of came into the fore, when Fergie tried to get someone in to replace Saha, temporarily, and eventually, of course, Tevez was signed, and that eventually forced Saha probably to make the move away, but a great striker, pace, power, finishing, and a superb left foot. And I think Louis Saha is one that's unlucky not to make the list. Bar injuries, he probably would have done.
Yeah, um, fantastic striker for United whenever he was fit, but obviously, as you said, injuries kind of killed his career a bit, and then he was let go in 2008. But he had some great moments in that 4.5 year spell, especially at the start of his career, and in that 06-07 season where he linked up with Rooney and Ronaldo. It was a real fluid front three, um, full of pace and dynamism, and yeah, he's played his part certainly in United regaining the title in 06-07, and as you said, we missed his presence in Europe, in his first half season when we signed him in January from Fulham. I think he scored in his debut against Southampton. I think was it a deflected free
Yeah,
kick or something? Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, as you say, we didn't have him in that Champions League running, and that would have been hugely beneficial to us. Uh, but yeah, again, like as we've said about others, he could have made the top 10 if he'd have played more games for United. When he was available, he was fantastic. Just wasn't available often enough. But it happens to certain players that their bodies just let them down. Um, and he was very much one of those. A bit like one or two players at the moment now. And they'd be great players for United if they could stay fit. So Brissy here says that Chikorito had a great interview with Rio Ferdinand recently. Yeah, I caught that actually. uh,
Yeah.
or not too much energy. I think he was harshly gotten rid of by Louis van Gaal after missing that penalty against Club Bruges. I think that was a bit harsh because
Mm.
uh, he was always a weapon to have on your bench, and I would have kept him if it were me. Um,
I don't think he
I,
fitted into Van Hal's kind of intricate passing possession style. Chicharito was never a player to hold on to the ball and pass it around. He was more get in the box and finish it off, lay it off and score in the 6 yard box type of player. And I don't think that suited Van Hal's style, unfortunately.
no, he wasn't. He wasn't the best technical player, shall we say? So yeah, I see what you mean. So Brushy says randomly, I quite liked Alan Smith before we tried to change him into Roy Keane.
Yeah,
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 yes,
I
Alan
love
Smith.
Alan Smith. Yeah, great player.
Uh, he scored a fantastic goal very early on in his career. I think it was against Norwich at Old Trafford.
Yes, yeah,
Brilliant strike with his left foot.
and he
Um,
scored a volley against Arsenal in the Community Shield as well, um, in Cardiff at the Millennium Stadium. Um, Great player. I really liked Alan Smith. He's definitely one of my favorite player, cult hero. Really, one of my favorite players that I've seen. Not for any reason in particular, just his commitment to Man United was brilliant to see.
he had a serious injury he sustained against Liverpool in the FA Cup, and the following season, when he made his comeback, he scored in that iconic 7-1 win over Roma. It was great to see him,
Yeah,
come back in such a memorable game and playing his part in
I
that.
think Clive Tildesley said, "The forgotten man is back."
That's
I
right, yeah.
always remember those words.
um, Brishy says that Rooney has said in interviews that Tevez was his favourite striker. Yes, he did. That is right. I've heard that.
Yeah,
So yeah, Rooney agrees with us that his best partner was indeed Carlos Tevez, and yeah, and Brishy has mentioned Liam van Nistelrooy, and he says that he was named after Liam Miller, which is a nice touch. Um,
yes.
yeah,
I had heard that actually. I think Van Nistelrooy himself mentioned that in an interview with Gary Neville on the overlap. I think that him and Liam Miller played together briefly, of course, in 04, 05, and Van Nistelrooy just happened to like the name Liam after hearing it. So, yeah, great Corkman as well, Liam Miller.
yeah. Um, it's really unfortunate what happened to him. Dreadful.
Mm.
Didn't have a very long life. Um, but yes, he obviously had an impact on Rude because he named his son after him, and his son looks every bit as talented as his dad based on one clip. But let's see what happens there. So maybe we could have a Van Nistelrooy and a Van Persie arriving at United in the coming seasons. But I think we put
And a Rooney.
Hannah Rooney as well. Yeah, imagine that. I think we put even if just one of them became a top striker for United, I'd be happy with that. I think it's asking a bit much for all three of them to become legendary strikers because it's really hard to emulate your dad, especially when he's and one of the best footballers of all time. We only have to look at Jordy Cruyff and how he struggled to live up to the name. Um,
Yeah,
he, I suppose Erling Haaland had the benefit of his dad was just sort of a mediocre, you know, midfielder at a mid-table level in the Premier League. He didn't
yeah,
have that much to live up to. Um,
no,
so he's probably one of the rare, footballers that is probably better than his dad. But yeah, to live up to Wayne Rooney, Van Persie, and Van Nistelrooy is really asking a lot. But yeah, they're certainly doing well so far in their young careers. So we shall wrap it up there. Please everybody smash like on the video, get subscribed to the podcast, and let us know if you disagree with our top 10. So we've pretty much agreed on who the top 10 are, and we just had them in slightly different orders. So I've enjoyed your company as always, Jerry.
yeah, great to be on again, Kyle. I really enjoyed this one. It was brilliant to reminisce about the top strikers that we've seen in our time following United, and going back to a great period of time for the club, and in life in general. I think the late 90s, 2000s were a great period in the world, and a lot of people would argue a better period than what we're in now. But yeah, delighted to be on again. So thanks for having me, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments, of course, who you'd have in your top 10.
Okay, guys, we shall leave it there for today, and I will see everyone again next week.